I got the text on a rainy Wednesday, halfway through my shift at the hospital. Dinner at the Willow Room. 7 p.m. Big news. It was from my mother, Evelyn Whitmore, sent to the family group chat that hadn't lit up in weeks. No emojis, no context, just those 4 lines sitting there like a dare. I stared at it for a good minute before I responded with a simple, "I'll be there." And even that felt too hopeful. The group chat had always been Savannah's territory, my younger sister. She was the golden child, the one who got the spotlight, the updates, the congratulations. Me, I was often left on read, or worse. Forgotten entirely, but something about the tone of this message felt different. That word, big, was like bait, not casual, not kind, intentional, almost performative, like they wanted me to wonder, like they wanted me present for something I wouldn't expect. I told myself it was probably harmless, maybe a family trip announcement, maybe something about Savannah's career, maybe, just maybe, they remembered it was my work anniversary last week. 10 years in nursing. Not that they ever kept track. My shift ended late, as usual. A double. 2 patients coded. 1 made it. 1 didn't. I barely had time to run a brush through my hair, let alone go home and change. So I walked into that upscale restaurant still wearing my scrubs, with my name tag hanging crooked and the smell of antiseptic clinging to my sleeves. The Willow Room wasn't just any restaurant. It was the place in Savannah where families went to celebrate milestones. I'd walked past it a dozen times, never once stepped foot inside. And now here I was, wiping my palms on my thighs as I stepped through the glass doors, hoping they wouldn't notice the bags under my eyes. Hoping this was the night things changed. As I passed the maitre d', I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Tired eyes, frizzy hair, a faint lipstick stain I'd smudged on in the car mirror. I looked like a woman who always arrived just a little too late to the party. The kind who hoped too much and learned too slowly. I followed the sound of laughter down the hallway until I reached the private dining room in the back. And when I turned the corner, everything inside me froze. They were all there. Evelyn, in a deep emerald dress, sipping wine with the poise of a woman who thought every dinner was a photo op. Richard, my father, leaning back with his arms crossed, smiling at Savannah like she'd won the lottery. Savannah, of course, at the center of it all, her blonde curls cascading over her shoulders like something out of a shampoo commercial, glowing as if the room existed for her. Even Grandpa Leonard was there, seated quietly at the far end of the table. I hadn't seen him in months. I almost smiled when I saw him. Almost, because then I saw it, the banner hanging above them, glittery and bold, like something you'd see at a graduation party. Congratulations to our real daughter. It hit me like a slap, not the banner itself, but the fact that no one else seemed to find it strange. No one flinched. No one rushed to take it down or explain it away. It was just there, loud and proud, spelling out exactly what they wanted to say without ever having to say it to my face. "Alina!" my mother called out from across the room, her tone bright and casual, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb above my head. "Oh, good, you made it. We've already started." I stood frozen in the doorway, caught between humiliation and disbelief. My sister Savannah turned to me with that signature smirk she'd perfected since we were kids. Her eyes flicked over my scrubs and messy hair, and she said, "Didn't have time to change?" The way she said it made it sound like I was the waitress who'd wandered into the wrong room. I nodded stiffly, my throat tightening. "Got off work late." A beat of silence followed. Not awkward for them, comfortable, like I was an afterthought, like they'd planned the party, knowing full well I wouldn't fit the theme. A waiter appeared beside me and, without a word, slid a spare chair to the very edge of the table, not between anyone, not within the circle, just on the edge. No one moved to make room. No one even looked at me as I sat down. I tucked my hands into my lap, trying to make myself small, invisible, Then Evelyn raised her glass again, a wide, rehearsed smile on her face. "To Savannah," she said, voice echoing slightly in the polished room. "Our real daughter. We finally have something to celebrate." Everyone clinked their glasses, except me. I stared at my untouched water, heart thudding in my chest. I looked up slowly, forcing myself to ask the question hanging in the air. "What does that mean?" "About me?" The table fell silent for a moment, not out of shame, out of boredom, like I'd interrupted something they were all eager to get back to. Savannah laughed first, light and dismissive. Okay, I'll explain," she said, leaning in as if sharing a juicy secret. "So I did one of those DNA kits, just for fun, and it turns out I'm not adopted. I'm actually their biological child. Full match." The table burst into delighted gasps and applause, like it was a gender reveal party. Richard wiped the corner of his eye. Evelyn placed her hand over her heart. "We thought we had her through surrogacy," she said, looking at Savannah like she was a miracle. "But no, she's all ours. Every bit." I blinked, trying to hold my voice steady. "So, if she's your biological child, then who am I?" Evelyn gave the smallest shrug. "Well, honey, you were part of the same process. It was complicated. We were young. Mistakes happen." Savannah let out a laugh. "Basically, I'm theirs. And you might be someone else's. Wild, right?" Everyone laughed again, a little louder this time, like I was the punchline to a very long, very private joke. I sat there, suddenly freezing in a room full of warmth. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the waiter returned. Not to the group, but to me. He leaned down and said, "The owner asked me to give this to you." He placed a small envelope in front of me. My name was handwritten on the front. Just Alina. No title. No last name. No, dear. Just Alina. And everything in me told me this wasn't part of the party. This was something else. Something meant only for me. Something that would change everything. I held the envelope like it might burn me if I opened it too soon. Or maybe save me if I waited long enough. The paper was thick, almost old-fashioned, and the ink had bled slightly at the edges like someone had written it slowly, deliberately. I didn't know what was inside, but I knew one thing. It didn't come from anyone at that table. The conversation resumed around me like I wasn't there. Savannah was now waving her phone, showing off the DNA test results like a trophy. Evelyn leaned in close, hanging on to every word like she hadn't just erased my entire identity with a shrug. Richard smiled proudly, nodding as Savannah explained the science behind her miraculous revelation. I sat still, my fingers brushing the envelope, but I didn't open it. Not yet. Then Savannah turned to me, grinning. "Honestly, this kind of explains a lot," she said, swirling the wine in her glass like a villain in a soap opera. "You've always been different." She didn't say it like a compliment. She said it like a diagnosis. And everyone, every single person, nodded or chuckled as if they'd always known, just never said it aloud. Like the weird puzzle piece had finally been identified. And they could move on now that the picture made sense. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. Tried to remind myself I was 30 years old, a professional, a nurse who had saved lives, who worked 18-hour shifts while they posted holiday photos on Facebook. But in that room, I was just a question mark, a complication, a mistake they had finally decided to laugh about over filet mignon. Then came the final blow. Evelyn reached across the table, not to comfort me, not to clarify, but to pour herself more water. "It doesn't really change anything, though," she said lightly, without even looking at me. "You're still family. Still family." The way someone says it about a second-hand dog they gave away years ago. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was clean, comfortable, for them. No one noticed the way my hands trembled in my lap. No one acknowledged that what they'd just revealed wasn't quirky or charming. It was devastating. Not one of them thought to say, "Are you okay?" or even offer a napkin. They just went on, eating, laughing, toasting. I looked at the banner again. Our real daughter! And something inside me began to bend in a way I knew couldn't be undone. I wasn't just second best. I wasn't even counted. Still, I didn't leave. Not right away. I sat there, heart pounding against my ribs, every breath shallower than the last. I waited. I waited for someone to turn to me, for someone to take my hand, for someone to say my name out loud with the same warmth they gave Savannah. But the only thing that acknowledged me was the envelope. So I stood up, slowly, carefully, like someone walking away from a fire they used to believe was home. My chair scraped softly against the floor. No one looked up. No one asked where I was going. "I'm just going to step outside for some air," I said, barely above a whisper. And like that, I left the room, left the clinking glasses, left the banner, left the people I thought were mine. I stepped into the cold night air, pulled the envelope from my coat pocket, and stared at my name. Just Alina. And for the first time, it felt like maybe that was enough. The street lamp above me buzzed faintly, casting a dull yellow circle over the sidewalk. I stood just outside the Willow Room, the sounds of clinking silverware and soft laughter still drifting from the windows behind me. I looked down at the envelope again. My name stared back at me in careful black ink, Alina. The handwriting felt familiar. Sharp strokes, slightly slanted, precise. Something I hadn't seen in years, but still stirred something deep in my chest. My fingers trembled as I opened the flap. I didn't know if I was about to be saved or shattered. Inside was a single sheet of folded paper. The writing stopped me cold, not because it was harsh, but because it was his, my grandfather's, Leonard Whitmore. I hadn't seen his handwriting since I was a little girl, back when he used to send birthday cards with $2 bills inside, back when he whispered things to me at family dinners like, "You're stronger than they think," and "You see the world clearly, just like your mother." At the time, I thought he meant Evelyn, but now I wasn't so sure. I unfolded the letter with both hands, anchoring myself to the bench beside the sidewalk as if the truth might knock me off my feet. "Alina, if you're reading this, it means they finally told you, or maybe they told you just enough to hurt you, but not enough to explain. I've waited years for this moment. There's something I've needed to say for a long time, but I was asked not to. And for a while I kept that promise. But no more." I swallowed hard, the words blurring for a second before sharpening again. "You were never supposed to end up with them. Your mother, your real mother, was Camila Reyes. She was my daughter's best friend. Fierce, kind, brave. She wanted you more than anything in this world. But she died in a car accident when you were just a baby." My chest constricted. "No one talks about her anymore. They buried her memory to protect themselves, not you. After the accident, Evelyn stepped in and said she'd take you in. She claimed it was the only way to keep you safe. I believed her. She was my daughter. I wanted to trust her. But she didn't take you out of love, Alina. She took you out of guilt, out of pride. She didn't want to raise Camila's daughter. She wanted to erase her." My breath caught. I remembered how Evelyn never spoke of friends, how there were no photos of me as a baby in the house, no baby books, no stories. "I tried, Alina. I tried to stay close, to remind you, but Evelyn wouldn't let me. She said I confused things. She pushed me out of the picture. And I let her. I'm sorry for that." The paper trembled in my hands. I could barely breathe. My entire life had been held together by silence. And now, in a single page, it was unraveling. But I kept everything. Camila's letters, her journals, her photos. I have a picture of her holding you in the hospital, smiling so wide you'd think she was the luckiest woman alive. Because she was. You were her miracle. You still are. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and unrelenting. "Come see me tonight. I'm still here. I'll tell you everything. Love." Grandpa Leonard, the letter slipped into my lap like it had done its job, like it had delivered its weight. I sat there, under the street lamp, letting the truth soak into my skin. Camila, my mother, a woman I'd never known, but who had once looked at me like I was her entire world. A woman who had loved me with her whole heart. Even if I never got the chance to hear it from her lips, I wiped my eyes with my sleeve and looked back at the restaurant. Inside, they were still laughing, still drinking, still toasting to the daughter they could finally claim. They hadn't lost anything tonight. But I had found something. A name, a truth, a thread of belonging I'd never known existed. And suddenly I didn't want their banner. I didn't want their chair. I didn't want their table. I wanted to know who I really was. And I knew exactly who could tell me. The drive to Grandpa Leonard's house wasn't long, only 15 minutes from the Willow Room, but every red light stretched into eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The city lights of Savannah flickered past like distant thoughts I couldn't hold on to. My heart beat with something wild and aching. Not quite fear, not quite hope. Something in between. His porch light was already on when I pulled into the gravel driveway. I hadn't been to this house in years. It looked exactly the same. White paint chipped in the corners. Wooden rocking chair on the porch. Wind chimes that caught the breeze with a sound so soft I almost missed it. It smelled like cedarwood and old memory. He was sitting on the porch swing, like he always had. For a moment I just stared. It felt like I was 10 again, about to ask him why stars twinkled or where bees went at night. And then he looked up and stood, slowly, deliberately, like this moment mattered. He didn't speak, just opened his arms, and I walked into them like I'd been holding my breath for 30 years. He held me longer than I expected, longer than anyone had in years. I didn't cry, not then. I couldn't. I just let the warmth soak in. The scent of old flannel and wood smoke. The steady beat of a heart that had never stopped looking for mine. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were glassy, but his voice was strong. "I'm so sorry you had to find out like that." I nodded, too choked up to speak. He led me inside, his hand on the small of my back like he was guiding a child again. The living room hadn't changed. Same crocheted blanket on the couch, same leaning lamp in the corner, same coasters shaped like tiny records. But it felt different now, not like a guest space, but like it had always belonged to me, too. On the coffee table was a small wooden box. He sat beside me and opened it slowly as if it were sacred. Inside were letters, dozens of them, neatly stacked, all in the same elegant cursive I'd seen in the hospital parking lot. "Your mother wrote these during her pregnancy," he said, voice thick with memory, "and a few after you were born. She used to say she could feel your heartbeat before you ever kicked. She talked to you every day." My hands shook as I picked up the top letter. The paper was soft with age, the ink slightly faded. "She loved you so fiercely, Alina." He reached into the box again and pulled out a photograph. I froze. A hospital bed. A young woman with deep brown eyes and long, dark hair. She was cradling a newborn, wrapped in a pink blanket. Her face. It was glowing, joyful, peaceful, radiant. "That's Camila," he said. I stared at her, at me. I had never seen her before. But somehow I knew her. I saw her cheekbones in mine, her smile in the corners of my mouth, the way she held me, like I was everything she'd ever wanted in the world. I had never felt real in a family photo, but in this one, I belonged. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Why didn't they tell me?" Leonard sat back with a long sigh, like he'd been holding that question for decades. "They wanted to erase her. Evelyn thought raising you would make up for losing her best friend. But it wasn't love, Alina. It was shame and control. She didn't raise you to honor Camila. She raised you to forget her." I felt something hot swell in my chest, grief, rage, relief, all at once. Then he reached into the box one last time. She left you this, he said quietly, handing me one final envelope. The handwriting was the same, but this time, the name on the front was different. It didn't say Alina. It said, "My dearest Lena Bug." My knees gave. My hands clutched the letter like it was a lifeline. It was from her, from Camila, the mother I never knew, but who never once forgot me. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. I didn't go back to Evelyn's house. Not that night. Not ever again. There was no text from her. No missed call from Richard. No follow-up message from Savannah. As if I'd quietly stepped out of their narrative and they had simply turned the page, kept reading, kept living without me. And for once, I didn't ache to be written back in. Instead, I stayed. Grandpa Leonard offered me the guest room, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and chamomile, with a slanted ceiling and a patchwork quilt that felt older than I was. The walls were lined with photos of Camila, teaching music to kids, standing barefoot by a piano, smiling at the camera like she knew something the world didn't. And hanging beside the window, just above a small wooden dresser, was a violin. Her violin. I used to pass music classrooms and wonder why my chest ached, why lullabies felt like memories I couldn't name. Now I knew. I hadn't grown up around music, but it had grown inside me anyway. Hidden in the corners, waiting. That first morning, I didn't wake up with dread in my throat. I didn't shrink at the silence. I sat on the porch swing with Leonard, watched birds flit across the yard, and felt the air move through me like I finally existed. He brought me another box later that week, this one smaller. Inside were the tapes Camila used to record for her students, and one, marked only with my name in her handwriting. It took me days to press play. When I did, her voice filled the room. "Lena Bug, this is Mama. I know you don't know my voice yet, but I've been talking to you since you were just a heartbeat." I sank to the floor, holding the tape recorder like it was made of glass. "If life gets heavy, remember you were made from love. You were never a mistake. Not once, not ever." I didn't even realize I was crying until Leonard wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. That was the moment the foundation shifted, not because I was angry or even heartbroken, but because I was done pretending. Done pretending I was okay with being invisible. Done chasing scraps from a table that was never set for me. I went back to work the next week. Nursing doesn't pause for personal awakenings. The hospital floor was still as chaotic and overburdened as ever. But something had changed in me. I smiled more, listened longer, held hands tighter. I started mentoring new nurses. And I started playing music, just simple melodies, quiet and shaky, but they were mine. I bought a second-hand keyboard and set it up in the guest room. Leonard would stand in the hallway, listening quietly, and sometimes hum along to songs he recognized. Every evening, I'd read a little more of Camila's journals. She'd been scared, overwhelmed, but her love for me was in every sentence, every doodle in the margins. She called me brave. She said I had her spirit, that she knew, even if she didn't get to raise me, I would grow up and find the light again. I wasn't trying to build a new family. I wasn't trying to replace what I lost. I was learning, finally, that family isn't what you're born into. It's who leaves the light on when you're wandering in the dark. It's who tells you the truth, even when it hurts. It's who holds your name like it means something. And every day I stayed in that house, every page I read, every note I played, I felt her closer. Not gone, not forgotten, but with me, always. Sometimes I still think about that night at the Willow Room, about the banner, the laughter, the silence when I asked, "What does that mean about me?" No one said a word, and that told me everything I needed to know. They didn't break me that night. They confirmed something I had always felt but never said aloud. That I had been living on the edges of someone else's story, a footnote in a family photo album where I was always slightly out of frame. But now I know better, because I found her. I found me. Camila didn't get to raise me, but she gave me something just as powerful, a truth no one could ever take away. She wanted me. She chose me. She loved me. And Grandpa Leonard, he waited. Through the birthdays that went uncelebrated, through the silences, through the lies, he waited with the light on. And when I arrived, bruised and breathless from a life I didn't fit into, he didn't ask me where I'd been. He just opened his arms. I'm not angry anymore. I don't need revenge. I don't need closure from people who never saw me in the first place. I've made peace with the fact that I wasn't their real daughter, because I was someone else's miracle all along. And that's enough. Maybe that's everything. So if you've ever been told you didn't belong if your name was forgotten, your place at the table never saved, your voice drowned out by louder ones, let me say this to you now. The truth doesn't destroy you. It sets you free. And love? Love will find you, even if it takes 30 years, even if it arrives in the form of a dusty letter, even if it's written in someone else's handwriting. It will find you, because you are worth finding. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever uncovered a truth that changed everything, tell me in the comments. I'm listening. We all are.